Welcome to the Nerds and Friends podcast. Today we are joined by author S.G. Tasz. So excited to have you here. Thank you so much for coming on. I know that we met through fellow author and podcast guest on here, Wayne Termel. So very excited to have you on here today.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here. Wayne, we have a writers group here, and we're both in Vegas.
Nice.
And he told me that after we'd met, he's like, you should talk to him about getting on the show. So I was like, well, if Wayne thinks it's cool, obviously I got to do it. So
Awesome. Well, that's very exciting. Wayne's been on 2 times now, and then we also recently did a table reading for one of his screenplays, and that was a super, super fun time.
right there,
Yeah.
that's where I met you for the first time.
Yeah.
Lurking in the background, sort of.
Yeah, that was a really fun time. So, and I heard it recently doing well at like some screenplay contest, I think, or something he entered
Oh, is
into.
it? I
That
haven't
he
heard.
mentioned that to me over Facebook, so that's exciting.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I just because of holidays and stuff, I haven't
Yeah,
really gotten the chance to like sit down and talk with him at any length. So but I'm glad to hear
totally.
that. That's awesome.
Yeah, one of my cats just jumped up behind the computer, so my webcam might move around a bit as he plays with it. Hey, don't mess with the cord there, buddy. um, but yeah, no, it's exciting. You mentioned the holidays. This is going to be our first episode of 2024, so very exciting.
Woohoo!
Yeah.
I'm
Well,
number one.
you are
So
number
long.
one for the year. Yeah, that's awesome. Well, tell us about your writing career. I was looking at your website, which everyone should check out, SG Tasz, which is spelled SGTASZ.com, to go see your works. It looks like you have a couple series and books, so I wanted to ask you about all those.
Yeah, so I've got currently I'm at 2 series, one complete and one just starting.
Nice.
I'm not to the point where I can work on multiple series at a time yet, so it's kind of, hopefully someday. But right now it's just I'm focusing on one at a time. So the first one that I started in 2019 and it wrapped up in 2022. And
So in
it's
3 years, how many books is that in a series?
it it was 8, but they're novellas. They're, like 120 pages each. So it's 8 novellas.
8
Um,
novellas in 3 years is still insane. That's awesome.
Thank you. Well,
Wow.
it's a little I will take the compliment. Yes, it is very impressive. But it's a little bit misleading because I did the first 3 books in kind of all at the same time because I had taken some fan fiction I'd written, some Army of Darkness fan fiction, and
Nice.
turned it into the first 3 books and then went from there. So it was a big hit of titles right away in like 3 months, and then spaced them out over the course of the next couple of years. But that one is, I mentioned it was Army of Darkness fan fiction. So that one originally started as a continuation of the movie 3 of Evil Dead, and it followed the S-Mart employees like 20 years or something after the events of Army of Darkness. So Ash was like a sort of sub character. He was a tangential character. It focused on 2 teenage kids, mostly a boy and a girl. And so when I adapted it to what became my series, which is called Dead Mall, moved it out of the big box store, got rid of all the proprietary information and turned it into what it is now. They, became the main focus, and that's how it ended up being a YA series, even though there are adult characters in it and it wasn't really written for teenagers.
Yeah.
But other than that, it's very similar to Army of Darkness. Creatures come out of portals to hell, possess people, and these 2 kids plus a couple of janitors and security guards they meet along the way have to fight them back night after night. And
That sounds cool.
Yeah, it is really fun. It was a really fun series to write. Probably did it a disservice because it was an experiment. I had never I've done all my series myself. I've independently published them all.
Nice.
And that one, I, had really no idea what I was doing. I had a little bit of mentorship from an author that Scott Burtness. I don't know if you know who that is.
I don't.
Monsters in the Midwest series. It's a really good series.
It's a great title. Grabs me immediately.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The first one is Wisconsin Vamp. It's a vampire who lives in like, I'm guessing it's somewhere in the Green Bay area, and he
Okay.
bowls, he drinks beer, all that stuff.
Yeah,
It's really fun series.
that's
So I
awesome.
sat down, talked with him. He gave me some advice on self-publishing, and I just kind of was like, okay, and jumped right into it without any preamble, without any pre-promotion, nothing. I just wanted to get it out there.
Yeah,
Um, Knowing what I know now, it probably would have had much more, traction right away.
yeah,
But now that I have my second series out, people are finding that because I knew what I was doing with that one. And now they're going back and finding the backlist and finding Dead Mall, which was kind of an unanticipated bonus, which is sort of
yeah.
nice.
That's awesome. And
Um,
before we jump into the second series, is the
yeah, yeah.
Death of Misadventure, right?
Death by
That's
Misadventure. Yeah.
Oh, Death by Misadventure, very cool. But before that, I was curious, what were some of the things you learned after the fact with that first series? Because a lot of our listeners are aspiring authors or independent authors. I've published 2 books myself, but I did what you did, where it was an experiment during the pandemic. I was like, I've always wanted to do this. I don't know if the world's falling apart. Let's do it. And so I'm curious what you've learned, because I want to see if there's things I'm missing in my
Oh,
hindsight on that.
so many things.
Yeah.
So so I'll kind of map this out for in terms of my publishing journey. So I published my first series in 2019, January 2019.
Okay.
It's coming up on the 5-year anniversary of it now, actually, which
Nice.
I'm very excited about.
That's awesome.
And I did that for three-ish years, a little over 3 years. So between January 2019 and September 2022, I published those books. And then took a year to write and publish my next one in 2023. So all that time, those 3 years, I was just learning stuff.
Yeah.
What I learned is specifically, I think there's kind of two things that I would say, and they're completely opposite advice. The first one is when you're doing a series starter, you really can't underestimate the importance of pre-promotion. I know it sounds crazy to promote something that isn't even out yet.
Yeah.
And like you feel like you don't have anything to talk about because you're not, a real author yet or whatever. Um, but it really doesn't matter. Like this is something that I heard before I released Dead Mall 1, and I didn't listen to it because I was like, no, that's ridiculous. But you really should like get your social media set up, get your author page set up. Even if you don't have anything to post right away, just get it out there so people can find you.
Yeah.
If you don't want to do a website right away, don't feel like you have to. You just have to find a place for people to come make sure you're legit.
Yeah.
Um, a mailing list right away, I would
Uh-huh.
also say, is something I would have liked to have had. So like you start your Facebook page, your Instagram, your TikTok, whatever social media you like. You don't have to do them all. In
Right.
fact, you probably shouldn't do them all. Just pick like a couple that you like.
Oh, good point.
Um, because like I'm on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. I
Those
gave
those
up
are the
on
3 I use the most. So that's,
yeah, I gave up on that
yeah,
other one
yeah, me too.
once in future Twitter, as I'm
I had to
calling
jump
it.
ship ethically. I was like, I can't, even though I met a lot of great people on there, it was a good community
Yeah,
for a long time before
yeah.
certain events.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it was the premier place for authors to go.
Yeah.
Um, and also like I'm big into hockey and
Oh,
uh
yeah.
and I follow the Packers because I'm from Wisconsin.
Nice.
And it was big on sports too, and it still is, but I can't with that right now.
Yeah.
Um, Maybe if things change down the road, but I gave
I,
up on it.
yeah.
And I have a TikTok, but I just haven't gotten like really excited about using it yet.
Yeah.
So I have it, but it's kind of if I can at some point.
There's the cat attack, like I was mentioning, was coming.
That's
Little
okay.
flop attack. They like the warmth behind the computer, so they like to.
No, I get it. My cat is probably hiding because she doesn't like noise, but
Oh, yeah.
my no longer with us cat, she would have been like right here, not even behind, like right in our
Yeah.
faces.
Yeah.
What was I saying? Social media.
Yes.
So pick whatever social media you like and that you think you can be consistent with, and kind of forget about the other ones or wait until you have more
There's
time
more
if you want to
demand.
explore.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's that. Once you get that set up an email list. I use MailChimp. It costs money. There are other ones. MailerLite, I've heard, is a pretty good deal.
Yeah.
I think they're free up to a certain number of subscribers. But get that set up, get something out there to get people signing up, at least the people that like your mom, your friends,
Yeah.
like just get them on there just to have something to start with. And then if you're gonna independently produce, get your pre-order up.
Oh,
And then you have something to post about, people can
that,
see
yeah.
that it's real. Um, and that is probably the biggest stuff I would have done once I was first starting out.
Yeah.
Um, my second piece of advice that is completely opposite of what I just said is there's also nothing wrong with just going out there and trying it too. Like if
Yeah.
if you're being impatient and you just want to have a book out there, my approach was I want something out there to play with. I want an ante, basically, so I can get into the game.
Yeah.
And, you know, I I knew going in that it was probably kind of a mistake. Like I could probably set myself up better, but I just wanted to get in the game.
Yep.
Um, and I don't totally regret that. Like that's another way to go about it. But you have to understand that you're probably not gonna, no, not probably, you're definitely not gonna put it out there and have like meteoric success just because it's
Yeah.
out there.
Yeah.
So if you're willing to accept that, then go ahead and do it. But understand that that's the situation. Get again, those meteoric overnight successes had a lot of work going up to it.
Yeah, that's really good advice because I think a lot of people, myself included, didn't appreciate how much of that stigma of like an upcoming event creates sales. So like pre-orders huge. Yeah, just all of that. And then the advertising being not necessarily like hyper professional with it, but just organized and consistent and dialed in. Like that's so
Yeah.
huge nowadays.
Consistent is, I would say, most
Yeah.
important. Now that I've gotten this second series, I was just doing my beginning of the month Amazon like evaluation on my Amazon ads, which
Yeah.
I would also say anyone who's just starting out, Brian Cohen's Author Ad School, he does free challenges. He does free basically, I forget how long they are. I think it's like a week or 8 days where he walks you through the basics of Amazon ads and it's
Uh,
logical and they do it based on data and it makes sense. He'll walk you through like how to find keywords. He'll walk you through how to find your categories, how to set up your keyword, like your big 7 keywords in your book record.
uh,
And he even does a little bit with like ad copy too.
uh,
So once you publish, definitely check that one out because that's been huge for me.
I was about to
Um,
go write that down, and I was like, wait, I'm going to edit the episode. I can just write it down then.
yeah,
So
absolutely check it out. I think he's
I
actually
will.
running another one. I want to say he does, like I said, every quarter. I think the next one will be pretty soon, end of
Okay,
January, beginning of February, if the pattern stays the same. So
nice. I will
that's
definitely check
another
that
thing
out.
if you're just starting out to jump on that as soon as you feel like you have the time and feel like you have the interest.
Totally. No, that's awesome. I've got 2 books under my belt, and I'm working on the third, and I want to do the third one using the things I've learned from the first 2. So
Mhm. Are they all in series or is
they're
this a
not.
new?
They're both standalone fantasy novels.
Oh, that's even
Which,
better.
yeah,
Yeah.
for the initial ones, because I think the third one I might be able to turn into a series. So I was like, with fantasy,
Yeah.
it's a lot with that genre. They tend to be more series. So being a standalone, I already kind of shot myself in the foot with that too. In some
That's
ways.
probably that. I'm gonna go back and change what I said. If you're the type that's just gonna do an ante, do a standalone. I think that
Yeah.
was something I would change too. Is my first book. I knew it was gonna be a series, and if I'd been thinking, I would have just done one book
Yeah.
to mess with and learn on. Because it's really hard to promote a later in series book
Yeah.
once the other ones are out. Now it's great because I have a finished series and a new series, but like
Yeah.
at the time when I had like, oh, book 4 is coming out, and people are like, I didn't even know this existed, and it's just
Yeah. That's
like,
hard.
ugh.
Well, tell us about Death by Misadventure. I read the pitch and I want to hear it from you, but as someone who lived a couple years in Las Vegas when I was a kid, I was like, this sounds like a very fun series.
Hey, I want to ask you questions about that because
Yeah,
that's always a fun thing to talk about.
totally.
But for yeah, so Death by Misadventure is kind of the book I've always wanted to write. Dead Mall was one I had sort of already existing that I could easily adapt. It's also set in Nevada, but it's set up
Nice.
near Reno area in the mining country.
Okay.
And this one is, yeah, it's set in Las Vegas. And it follows a woman who, Adina Venture is her name, hence the kind of pun. Um, so she's the titular Miss Adventure. And she is an operator, which is this in-world word for a magician, essentially.
Okay.
And she has the power to, I guess the easiest way to say is that she can astral project. She can basically become a ghost,
Oh.
um, incorporeal, invisible. Um, but it's not just like doing it. What she does is she takes like a memento or an artifact from a person, and she goes through her ritual and she will show up wherever they are or near wherever they are.
Oh.
Um,
Kind of
also
like to
attached to
locate
that.
them. It has to be something that has meaning to them. That's cool.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, she can just like her ritual is to lay down in the dirt in a dark place, basically die,
Oh.
and emerge as a ghost. And she can just do that right there. But in order to like transport physically, she has to have an item. And on top of that, she can use this item to inflict death on whoever it's attached to. So
Oh.
she uses her ability to be an assassin. She
Oh.
gets jobs, she gets these items, she tracks these people down. She does research, she makes sure that they're a bad person first.
Yeah.
And then she uses this item to kill them in ways that look like accidents, hence the title Death by Misadventure, because that's another way of saying
Oh.
unfortunate accident. And so that's her. And then the plot of the story is shortly into the book. She's kidnapped by a couple of sort of black ops guys from the Order, which is the secret magical society that, secret magical government, because,
Yeah. Gotta have
there's
one.
always that. And she's taken to their headquarters, the Summit, which is south of Las Vegas, and
Oh.
she is told by their leader, Prime, that they believe that she murdered one of their cops, essentially.
Oh.
He was killed in a way that's very much like her, like the kind of thing she does. She's not
Yeah.
a member of the
Accidental but
Order.
suspicious, and they're like, "Hey, we think you did this."
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. They're like, this is very much you. And she's not a member of the Order, but they've been watching her unbeknownst to her this whole time. And they're like, we know what you do, we know what you are.
Yeah.
This was you, don't deny it. And she knows that she didn't do this.
Yeah.
So they give her the opportunity to clear her name. However, the catch is she has to remain magically bound. It's called a lash. It's an invisible connection to one of the Black Ops kind of CIA guys
Yeah.
who's a very suspicious, very grumpy British man
Yeah.
who's super convinced that she definitely did this.
Okay.
So they're kind of stuck together. And as the story goes on, you know, things get more complicated. It's not as straightforward as you think. And then they also start developing kind of a relationship as well. So
Oh.
it's a slow burn romance. It's a kind of gothic-y, sort of hidden in plain sight magic masquerade.
Nice.
And it's very much urban fantasy. Not a lot of like hacking and slashing, but a lot of
Yeah.
magic and mystery.
That sounds awesome.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's really fun to write. So that
I,
one's out
yeah.
now, and then the second book, I'm finishing the final draft on it by the end of this month, and that'll be out in
Oh,
April.
congrats. That's exciting. Well,
Yes.
and everyone who's listening can go to sgtasz.com to pre-order that and get on board. Read the
Yep.
first book now. That's so cool. I have a question. Do most people in that world know about magic or no?
No, it's
That's
said in the
very secret.
beginning that it's kind of it's not like a closed secret. They're not
Right.
trying to hide it, but it's like most people just don't bother seeing it. They
Yeah.
don't run in those circles. Some people do. Some
Yeah.
people are aware. Um, but mostly it's like they kind of just keep themselves separate, but they're not trying to hide anything.
That is awesome. So the next question is, would you be open to running a D&D game set in that world?
Oh my God.
Because
I
that
never
sounds
thought
very
about it,
fun.
but yes, I
Yeah,
would love to do that. That sounds amazing.
that would be
I mean,
very cool.
the thing is, I've always liked the idea of, especially in Vegas, like I live here now, but I used to come here all the time when I was a kid and more as an adult, and it always feels like there's something going on, like
Yeah,
just nearby, but you can't really see it. I imagine it's probably more like corruption and
yeah, right.
but in my imagination, it was magic.
Yeah,
So I wanted to write a book like that. So the campaign, if I was to run it, would be set in Vegas
yeah.
as is. We would just have magic too.
That is a game I'd play in for sure.
Oh yeah, it's a game I've, mentally am playing all the time just because it's fun when I'm
Yeah.
walking down the street.
No, I'm really glad. My dad was stationed at Nellis Air Force Base when I was a kid. So as
Okay.
a young kid, we would just go around and see all the different crazy things in Vegas, and I think it really was a big factor in like my creativity later in life.
Oh
Because
yeah.
like you were,
Yeah.
that's a great way of saying it. I feel like there's something magical happening behind the scenes because like it is probably just like everyday corruption stuff, but because it's masquerading as wondrous, big, elaborate feats of showmanship, it really does bring that sense to
Yeah.
it.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I was how old? What years did you live here?
It was in the early
In
90s.
80s.
I was like 3 to 5, 3 to 6, very young.
Okay.
So yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, the early 90s in Vegas. I
Yeah.
think that's where a lot of people our age, like, it's where I fell in love with Vegas because it was
Yep.
so geared towards kids.
Yeah.
Ironically, I'm not a
Like
gambler.
yeah, me neither,
So,
but like
so
what
like,
was the clown place? Circus. We
still
used to go
there.
there. Yeah, we used to go there a lot.
Hasn't
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 been
been
open, right?
touched as far as I know. Like they
Yeah.
still have the Midway. I took my I have a 2-year-old son and I have at the time he was 4-year-old nephew. We took them down to the Midway just a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
And I was like, I want to come back here on a date night. That place is awesome.
Yeah.
And you're much more likely to win a prize than if you go to the casino.
Yeah. No, it's fun too going as an adult because I have like kind of this very hazy, almost dreamlike memory of my childhood, and then it's fun. So I love going to Vegas.
Yeah, it's I mean it's changed a lot since
Yeah. But
the
talking
late
to
90s.
Wayne, who moved out there a couple of years ago, he was saying it's a really good creative hub because I live in Colorado now and I grew up in Colorado mostly, other than Vegas. But I lived in LA for a while for work, and I'm trying to decide if I want to go back there for the film industry. But Vegas is so close, and if there's a burgeoning author community and a lot of creative circles, it's something I'm considering. So it's cool.
Oh yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, I specifically moved here because of the writing community that's here. It
Nice.
took a little bit of a hit during COVID because we had to go, online and
Yeah.
everything. But before that, there was an amazing conference that they did here every year. They still do it. It's online right now.
Yeah.
I heard rumors that it might be coming back in person next year, but there's for 2024, they're still online.
Yeah.
Um, and then 20 Books to 50K had a conference out here every year. They had their last one last November, and now it's being taken over by another group. But there's another big conference in November that happens as well. So there's one in April, that's the Las Vegas Writers Conference run by locals. And then what 20 Books was and Author Nation is what it's going to be now. That's in November. So there's a
Okay.
couple of big indie conferences and writer conferences that happen here. And
That sounds
also
awesome.
like the groups are just like I'm a chair of the Sin City Writers Group. We meet twice a week, every week.
Oh wow.
And we are full. Like we
That's
had
awesome.
12 people this week at our table. It
Wow.
was it was packed and full reader lists every night. Like
That's
and that's
fantastic.
after COVID, like,
Yeah.
and it took a while to get it built back up again. But yeah, there's a lot happening here. I'm very proud of it, but I'm also like, if I tell too many people, it'll get like
Yeah, you don't want it
overrun.
to
So
overrun, so
we don't have
we'll
the infrastructure for that yet.
we'll edit that
Um,
out, and we don't have sponsors on this podcast yet, but we'll make it this segment's sponsor only. You got to get the exclusive info
right.
about Vegas.
I mean, it's terrible. No,
Yeah, don't
don't come
don't go
here.
there. Don't go there. That's
No,
awesome.
but also speaking of LA, I've heard tell if everything stays that there's going to be a train between here and LA pretty soon, high speed rail. Not pretty
Oh
soon,
yeah.
like several years from now, but
Yeah.
things are
Well,
happening in that arena too. So
across that span of desert, you could do something kind of like they do in Japan with the bullet train and probably cut it down to an hour, hour and a half commute.
yeah, I don't know what they were projecting in terms of time, but I think it was like 2 hours. I
That's
want to say
that's not
something like
bad.
that.
And especially if you're not driving a vehicle, you could be doing other work while you're sitting there commuting. So that's interesting. Okay. That's
Yeah,
exciting.
so yeah,
S-
that's
Speaking of the desert, when you mentioned in your series that the head of the like magical government is south of Vegas, I was like, if that was a real thing, 100% it would be there. Like the
there's
desert's just a
nothing.
weird place, and like, yeah, I feel like the
I
government sees
know.
desert and is like, we can do all our weird stuff here. This is perfect.
Yep. Yep. They just kind of like commandeered a mountain, hollowed it out, and built offices in there, and nobody bothers them because there's nothing there.
Yeah, and the government likes to do that. I've been inside NORAD here in Colorado Springs a couple times, and that's another
Yeah.
weird hollowed out government mountain. So,
I've been up to the Nevada test site in Mercury once
oh yeah,
for research on another book I'm hoping to write because I mean, this book is nowhere near close to anything, but it's set in the late 90s.
oh nice.
So I want to do a book set in the late 90s in Vegas just because it was such a fun time. But it involves like the nuclear testing and atomic stuff, and
That's
that
cool.
place is weird.
I
Like
bet.
they have the blasted out buildings, they have the massive craters,
Oh
like
wow.
it is crazy up there.
What hoops did you have to jump through to get a tour of that place? Is it open to the public
Yeah,
now or?
you do have to fill out a form
Yeah.
and set like I think they do, I can't remember. Well, again, this was pre-COVID, so I don't know if it's changed, but they used to do, I want to say monthly or bi-monthly bus tours up there.
Oh okay.
Um you weren't allowed to take photos, you weren't allowed to I had to bring a notebook if I wanted to write stuff.
Yeah.
Um and
Which
yeah, you
fits
had to
fits your
like
'90s aesthetic. No smartphones. You're just pen and paper
exactly.
journalisming it. Yeah.
Um but yeah, that place was and yeah, like there's so much nothing in this state. Like we
Yeah.
drove again right before COVID this time. We drove from Nevada to Reno
Yeah.
and it is terrifying. Like if you get stuck
Yeah.
out there, you might very well die in this day and age. Like it's dark,
That's
like some
that.
of the it's a non-divided highway. So you
Oh.
have cars coming at you and it's the only like freight, like trucks. So you got trucks on this road and they're going slow, so you pass the trucks and it's like, at night there's no lights. So like if you're trying to pass a truck and someone's coming at you without lights on, like you're dead. It feels like the moon. It feels
Wow.
like a different planet out there. It's
That's
insane.
wild.
Hmm.
I got to
And
figure that's
then,
got to spark a lot of creativity, though. Stepping into something so different from our day to day, that's pretty cool.
and there are towns like there's a ghost town, like a legit ghost town,
Oh wow.
maybe an hour. It's near Beatty, kind of near where you turn to go to Death Valley.
Okay.
Um, and it's also very creepy. Like it's just one of
That's
those mining towns that like popped up for 5 years and then the mine ran out
yeah.
and
The
then
the
everyone just
darkness.
left and the buildings are still there.
That's cool.
And yeah, it's Nevada's a really fun state. There's a lot of, and then you have Vegas, which like is so
Yeah.
different from all the rest of it.
Vegas
So
is awesome.
yeah, I kind of my brand is sort of I write all stuff that's set in this state because I find it so fascinating. So
Huh.
that's why I
Well,
kind of had to move here.
yeah. Well, and to write something you're familiar with and have kind of a ground side perspective on that your readers might not have is going to allow them to jump into your world. So that's awesome. That's really cool.
Hmm. Yeah, and that was important to me, and to kind of show Vegas as a local might see it, even though it's a magical world, even
Yeah.
though the locations I use aren't, branded locations just for safety purposes. But if you know the city, you know
What you're
where I'm
referencing.
probably talking about, even though the name
Yeah.
is different. Um, and I wanted it to feel like this is someone who really is living here. Um, and I've had people come up to me at events and stuff and say, locals say like nobody ever gets Vegas right. And this felt right. And I was like,
That's awesome. Well, I think when you have any kind of fantasy or science fiction or something that's outside of people's everyday experience, when you can transport them into that world with familiar mundanity, it adds a lot to it. I think that's like the first Star Wars movie really hit with people because there'd been all kinds of chromed out 1950s and 60s sci-fi before that, but in Star Wars everything was dirty and gritty and lived in, and so I think a lot of urban fantasy feels very like overly stylized and projected, whereas it sounds like yours is very much like ground level authentic, and that appeals to people. So even if they don't know at firsthand that it's authentic, it just appeals to them.
yeah, that's my hope. And I think Dead Mall, by contrast, is a little more of that like super powered humans doing super powered things. There's a lot of like kind of D&D elements to it. They have advanced healing. They,
Yeah.
they pick their weapons. They have a proficiency. Like
Oh, that's
it's a
cool.
lot more fantastical. But in Death by Misadventure, like everyone in it, like the main character, Adina, she lives in a really nice house because she makes a bunch of money, from killing people.
Yes.
Um, but like she has that, she does all of that, and it's very, mystical and kick ass and crazy. But she has her mom and sister living with her
Oh.
um, in the house. She actually lives in the pool house because it's big property, and they live in the main house. And they live there because her mom's second husband died, and they couldn't support themselves. So
Oh.
she told them to come out to Vegas, and they could all live together. And like, there's a family dynamic and awkwardness, and
Yeah.
um, all of that. And she's very much like, you don't really get this in the first book, but in the second book, like there's combat scenes, and she doesn't know what to do because she's never been in combat,
Yeah.
you know. So yeah, it's
She's used like stealth and
yeah, she
her astral
stays
projecting, yeah, to stay ahead
exactly.
of the game. That's cool.
Hmm. Yeah.
That's cool. Well, we do a silly question on this podcast, but it is fun. If the main characters from your first series were going on a road trip with the main character of Death by Misadventure, Adina Venture,
Yeah.
how would that play out? How would they get along, those characters, if they had to go on a road trip together?
Oh boy. I think, well, Adina is older than the two main characters of the series.
Yeah,
She does not hang out with teenagers, so I think she would be incredibly awkward around those two for sure.
yeah.
Um, she might feel a little bit of affinity for Carrie, who's sort of quiet and um, more of a shrinking violet, but Carrie's also kind of crazy.
That's
So
so funny you said that because one of the other hosts on our podcast, Carrie, she's a huge Army of Darkness fan. So I wish she could have been here. She would have loved that. So
yeah,
that's
oh,
so
that's
funny.
too bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the main character's name.
Oh, that's awesome.
Um, yeah. So she might kind of gravitate towards her because she's a little bit more quiet.
Yeah.
Um, Carrie's best friend, Rex, who's like a wannabe anarchist, I don't know that she'd get along with him at all. She might find him funny,
Yeah.
um, but I don't know that she would. She might. I don't know. That's hard to say. Um, and then the others, I think she would probably just kind of stay away from them.
Yeah.
Um, and actually, there's one. Well, I don't know how that would work because there's one character, Simon, who is agoraphobic, and
Oh.
he's like the surveillance guy, so he's watching all the cameras in
Oh,
the
in the mall
security
to
suite.
see stuff going on.
So I don't know that he would even be going on a road trip. He might just be on the phone with somebody.
He'd
That's
be joining
typically
them
how.
remotely
Yeah,
from an
he would
undisclosed
be
location.
right. He would be on a Zoom call,
Yeah.
talking to them
In
on a
the
phone
vehicle.
somewhere.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool.
Um, so yeah, maybe she would just talk to the guy on the phone.
Yeah. Ignore the
She'd probably
teenagers
be
around here and just
mad.
talk.
She'd probably be mad that calling in was an option and nobody told her.
That's awesome. That's fun. Well,
Yeah.
do you have an estimation of how many books are going to be in the Death by Misadventure series?
Oh, I wish I did. I'm gonna guess it's probably gonna be somewhere around 8,
Nice.
like Dead Mall was. Dead Mall, I didn't have a sense of how many it was gonna be either. It
Yeah,
just sort of went until I felt like I'd hit a spot that felt like a good place to stop.
totally.
Um, and kind of with the option to continue it, but it is closed, that series. Um, and I'm guessing Misadventure will probably be the same way, but Dead Mall, if it had picked up steam, probably would have kept going.
Oh, okay.
So I always sort of say, like, if people keep reading it, if it keeps finding new people, I'll keep writing it.
Yeah.
But I do want to cut it out because I finished reading the Sookie Stackhouse series this summer, which is 13 books. The series True Blood is based on.
Oh, okay. I didn't know it was based on a series. That's cool.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's
I've
kind
never
of
seen the
based on
show
the.
either. Yeah.
Okay. I watched the show. I think I read the first 3 books and then I watched the show. They're very
Is
different.
that the one that was on HBO?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. With
There's
Anna
another.
Paquin.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Is Ian Somerhalder in that one as well, or is he in the other vampire show that ran around the same time?
Yeah,
Get
no, I
those
don't think
mixed up.
he's in that
Okay.
one. It doesn't sound familiar. But like that's based on the first maybe 2, 3 books.
Oh, okay.
And then it goes off in its own direction. And that's kind of where the series, it's 13 books total. And after a while, it just gets really weird. And it's like, I can tell you're running out of ideas. So
Yeah.
I want to not do that.
Good
If I
call.
feel like that's starting, I'm going to start kind of the end sequence and wrap it up.
That makes
Um,
sense.
yeah.
Well, that's really cool. This has been awesome. Again, everyone listening needs to go to sgtaszz.com to check out SD Tosh's books on her website. I have one last question though. What are some of your goals as an author besides finishing the awesome Death by Misadventure series? What are some of your other kind of goals with your career?
I mean, the big one is to, become financially self-sustaining. I'm not there yet. There's signs that it, could be happening soon. But
Congrats,
it's
that's
still
huge.
very much in process.
Yeah.
Um, and it's another thing that I didn't believe. I should learn to believe people when they say things if they've been doing this longer than me. But the advice that they give is just keep writing, put out the next book. That's the best way to sell the other books. And I didn't
Yep.
believe them, and it's turning out to be true. So that's just another thing, is finding a way to keep it sustainable.
Yeah.
I would like to be able to do more than one series at a time. I don't know if that's going to end up happening. It might be a series and then some standalones kind of interspersed.
Yeah.
I have this idea about doing this last Christmas. We didn't talk about the third series. It's not really a series, it's a standalone book. It's called Mr. Lucky, and it's a Christmas book. I wrote it on a whim. It's sort of more like Misadventure. But it's 8,000 words. It's really, really, really tiny. And it's about a man who, for one night a year on Christmas Eve, he can't lose any game he plays. He will win no
Oh,
matter what he does. And it's kind of a what's going to happen with this premise.
that's cool.
And yeah, it was another really fun one to write. Also set in Vegas. That one is actually set in the 90s,
Oh, nice.
99. And because it's so small, this year during Christmas, I kind of promoted it as an alternative to a greeting card because you can mail it.
Oh,
Um,
that's really cool.
yeah. And like instead of a dedication page, it has like a little greeting, and like you can fill it out, address it to somebody, write a little
Yeah.
note. And people really liked the idea. And I kind of want to look into like doing a couple of more little stories like that. I didn't write that one with this idea in mind, but now I kind of want to write a couple of stories with that,
That's a
marketing
really,
idea.
yeah, that's a really unique way of packaging it to people and letting
Mm-hmm.
them distribute it for you. Oh,
Yeah,
my brain's going crazy for ideas. That's really cool.
I know. Yeah, a lot of people, a lot of writers have said like, "Oh, I want to do that."
Yeah.
So if there are any writers out there who are interested in that, including you, I kind of want to. I don't want to just do it me either. Like I want to do a couple of my own, but I also, if other people are going to do it, we can all kind of share
That'd be
each
cool.
other's work. Um, so I'm toying around with that. I've got some time because it wouldn't be until the last few months of the year. That's more immediate, and if that takes off, then I kind of want to expand on that idea.
Very cool.
But ultimately, it's just about sustainability and not burning out because with marketing, I do almost everything myself, and it's a lot, and if you're not careful, it can really get on top of you, and you can start wondering like, ugh, why am I doing this? I'm working so hard,
Yeah.
and it's the money is tough to come by sometimes,
Yeah.
and when those times hit, like, you really need to rely on just the joy of the work,
Yeah.
and if that starts fading, then it's trouble.
Yeah.
So that's sustainability to me, is never making it so hard that you lose the joy.
That's a really good benchmark to see where you're at with the career, because that's one of the reasons I do this podcast mainly, is to keep stoking the flames of my interest in it, because I
Yeah.
recently got diagnosed with ADHD at the age of 32, and I was like, oh, that explains so much, because I'm always just ping ponging in different directions. So trying to bring back my focus to this, and it's really cool. So that's a really good way to fixate on, like you said, the sustainability and the interest and passion. I like that a lot.
Yep. That's why I do live events.
That's
I
awesome.
really love, I've done the Las, might surprise people to know, but we have a Las Vegas book festival here every fall. And
Every
this
fall.
year it actually
Yeah.
featured Rebecca Yarros of Fourth Wing, if you know that book.
The name sounds really familiar. I don't know that
It
one
is
though.
a major book from 2023. It
Oh,
was everywhere. Still
really?
is. The sequel came out a couple months ago.
Wow.
And she had lines down the block for her
Wow.
signing. So it was, I mean, and I do that every year. I do a booth every year, and I love
That's awesome.
meeting local readers and
Yeah.
other local writers. But yeah, the live
Yeah.
events keep the marketing fresh, especially like the writing is always fun. The marketing can become a grind.
Yeah.
But for me personally, the live events um are where I have the most fun with my marketing.
That's cool. Because I've actually never done one, because I published all during the pandemic. So I haven't, I got to go to a local Comic Con or something, because I
They're
write
coming
fantasy.
back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That sounds really cool. So
Hmm.
awesome. Well, SG Tosh, thank you so much for joining us. This has been a delightful episode of Nerds and Friends. First one of the year. Thank you so much. This has been awesome.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. This is great.
Yeah, of course.